Hello, in this video I'm going to be doing a beginner's tutorial to anyone new in Unreal Engine. I'll be going over how to navigate the viewport in Unreal Engine and explaining what blueprints do, and then finally I'm going to go over the process of me creating some blueprints. So the first thing you want to do is head over to unrealengine.com and it will take you to this website. Then you want to create an Epic Games account or sign into your Epic Games account if you have one. You'll be able to do that by just going to the sign in button here. Once you've signed in or created your account, you just want to head over to where it says download, and we're going to install the Epic Game Launcher. So once you click download, it will take you to this page. And in this video, we're going to be using Unreal Engine for game development. So we're going to be downloading this publishing license one. So you just want to scroll down and click the download now button. And it'll start to install the Epic Game Launcher. And once you've installed it, you should see it on your desktop here, or you'll be able to search for it in your computer. So I'm just going to look for the Epic Game Launcher. And then we want to open it up. Once you open it up, it should look like this. And then you want to head over to the tab which says UE5 and download the early access version of Unreal Engine 5. Once you've finished installing it, if you head over to this tab, you'll be able to see this UE5 early access. You then want to click launch. Once it's loaded, it will bring up this Unreal Engine project browser and I'll be able to see all my recent projects. But for this tutorial, we're going to be creating a game. So we want to select this games button, and then we want to select the third person template. So Unreal Engine comes with a bunch of game templates that you can start your game with. So you can see it comes with this first person one, this puzzle one, this third person one, and this top down one. But for this tutorial, we're going to be starting in the third person one. So just select this, and then we just want to click create. So now that the project has loaded, I'm going to explain the different tabs that we're going to be working with inside of Unreal Engine. Let's start off with the World Outlier tab. This will basically display everything that is in this current level. So if I just scroll down and select something like this ramp, it will highlight it and it'll basically just give me all the details about this ramp in this world. So it'll give me the location, the rotation, the scale, the static mesh that it has, and the color that it is in the world. And if I just double click on it, it will zoom into this object. So this world outlier basically just keeps a track of everything that is in this level. Next, we have the content browser. This will just keep all the blueprints and objects that we have inside our whole entire project. So if I just go to this third person BP folder, for example, and go to the blueprints, we can see it has this third person character, and this is the third person character that's in this level. So the content browser will just basically contain all the blueprints and objects that you have inside of your project. And then finally, we have this place actors tab. So using this place actors tab, we can look for actors that we've created in our project. So I could look for something like the third person character, and we can see it will come up here. And we'll also be able to look for built-in features which are inside of Unreal Engine. So in each Unreal Engine project, there'll be this cube actor. So let's look for cube, we'll be able to see it. So we can just use this place actors tab to find objects that we want, and then we can just select them and drag them into our world. I'm now going to go over how to manipulate this cube inside of Unreal Engine so that we can have this looking how we want it to. So if I just select this cube, we can see that it has all these different arrows. If I select one of these arrows and pull the cube, it will start to move it in that axis. So if I select this blue one, which represents its z-axis, and select the cube, I'll be able to move it up and down. And we can just basically select and hold on these arrows to move the cube. We can also specify what distance we want to move the cube with these actors. So if I just scroll up to this tab and go to this grid button, if I select this button, cool. If I go up to this number and I select something like 50, now when I select an axis and move the cube, it's going to move by 50 units in that axis. So I'm going to make that something a bit bigger so it's a bit more noticeable to see. So if I make this something like 500 and I start to move the cube in the y-axis, every time I move it, it's going to move by 500 units. So you can just do that if you want to move the object a bit more specifically. Although if you wanted to turn this off, you could just click this grid button and now you'll be able to move this freely without it moving to a specific unit each time. But I'm just going to turn this back on and make this one. The next way that we can manipulate an object is by rotating it. So if you see this tab, we can just click on this rotate button, or you can click E on your keyboard and we'll be able to start to rotate this cube. And we can do the same thing. We can specify by how many units we want this to rotate by. So if I just select here and I select 60 degrees, Now when I rotate it in any axis, it's going to move by 60 degrees each time. And again, we can turn this off by just selecting this rotating icon. And now we can rotate this freely. And then the last way we can manipulate an object is by changing its scale. And to do that, we just want to click the scale button, or we can click the R key on our keyboard, and we'll be able to change the scale of our object. And again, I can select which axis I want to scale it in, and I can just drag, and we can specify how much we want it to scale by going to this button. And say I make this something like 0.6025, it'll start to scale by that amount each time. Let's say I make a mistake and I'm unhappy with something I've done. I can just click the Control Z button and it will undo my previous steps. So those are basically the 3 ways you can manipulate an object inside of Unreal Engine. And then just a helpful tip, if your Unreal Engine is maybe being a bit laggy, you can change its scalability settings so it will be a bit less laggy. So up here, we can see that the scalability for my project is set to high. So it's made everything high. The shadows, the texture, the foliage, the shading, it's all high. If you're running on an older computer or something, you can make this something like medium, and Unreal Engine should be a bit less laggy for you. And then there is one more button in this editor. If we just click this play button, it will start to load up and play this level. And we can start to play around in this level. And then if I click the escape button, it will stop that and we'll be ejected from the level. So those are basically some of the basic folders and functions inside of Unreal Engine. So now that I've gone over some of the main tabs that you'll be using inside of Unreal Engine, I'm now going to go over blueprints. Blueprints are the visual scripting system inside of Unreal Engine that we use to program gameplay elements. So let's go over how we would create one. So I'm just going to head over to my content folder, and it's a good idea to be organized. So I'm just going to right click and create a new folder, and I'll just call this blueprints. And inside of this folder, I'm going to have all the blueprints that I'm going to make in this tutorial. So we can just head inside this folder, and we're going to create our first blueprint. So to do that, we just want to right click, and I'll bring up all these things, and we just want to select blueprint class. And the blueprint class that we're going to be using in this tutorial is going to be an actor. So an actor is an object that can be placed or spawned in the world. And we just want to select this actor, and I will just call this my first blueprint. And then we want to double click and head inside of this actor blueprint. Inside of this actor blueprint, there are going to be 3 different tabs that you normally work with. So the first tab is this viewport tab, and this will basically show how the blueprint looks. So to modify how the blueprint looks, we can go to this component tab, and if I just go add and scroll down, I can add some basic shapes. So I'm just going to add this cube. So now in this viewport tab, we can see that if I drag this blueprint into my world, it would look like this basic. Next off, we have the construction script tab and the event graph tab. I'm going to come back to the construction script tab and explain how to use this a bit later, as it'll make more sense. So inside of this event graph tab, we can code in some logic for how our blueprint should behave and how it will affect the world. So it will come with these 3 default nodes: event begin play, event actor begin overlap, and event tick. So I'm just going to explain briefly what each of these do. So event begin play will happen as soon as this blueprint is spawned into this world. So I can just drag off here and look for the node called print string. So in Unreal Engine, in order to code with blueprints, we use different nodes. So this is one of the nodes, print string. So I've just hooked it up to this event begin play. So as soon as the game starts, it's going to print this string. So now if I just click compile to clear this blueprint, and then I drag this first blueprint into the world, and I'll just move this up a bit, and I click the play button, it will print string hello because of our blueprint. So that's what event begin play does. As soon as the game starts, it will print this string. Next up, we have event actor begin overlap. So this will be triggered when our player overlaps with the cube. So I'm just going to right click here and break all links. Breaking all links will just disconnect the nodes. And I'll just drag this here and connect this here. And click compile. So when our player character overlaps this cube, it's going to print string hello. Although in order for this to be effective, our player will need to be able to overlap this cube. So if I just head back to the viewport and select the cube, you want to just scroll down And under collision, we can see that its collision presets are set to block all dynamic. So that means it will just block everything. We want to just select this and change this to be overlap all, so that it can overlap with everything. And then click compile. And now, if I click play, and my player runs into the cube, it'll print string hello. So that's basically what event actor begin overlap does. So it will trigger this node once our player overlaps this. And then finally we have event tick. So the way event tick works is every frame on your computer, it will run this event. So I can just break the link here and connect this into here and click compile. And now when I click play, event tick, so every frame is just going to run that event. So that is what those three default nodes do. And we normally use the event graph to program in logic for how our blueprint should behave. So next off, I'm going to explain how we can use this construction script node. So the way this will work is that whenever this is constructed or placed in the level, it will just run this event. So to demonstrate an example of this, I'm just going to close this tab, and we're going to create a new material for our cube. So I'll also teach you how to make a new material. So to do that, we just want to right click and select material, and I'm going to call this red because I'm going to make this material red. Then you want to just double click and head over to this material, and it will open this up. And what you want to do is just right click and look for constant 3 vector, and I'll bring up this color. We can then double click inside here and just drag this to the red or color that you want and click OK. And then we just want to connect this node into base color. And click apply. So that is basically how to create materials inside of Unreal Engine, and you'll see why we did this. So I'm now going to go over why I just created that. It will help us show us the difference between how we use the event graph and how we use the construction script. So I'm now going to make it so that the cube will turn to that red color in my event graph, and I'll show you the difference. So if I just drag in this cube, so this is taking a reference to the cube actor, we can drag off here and look for set material. And we're going to set its material to be red, and we'll just connect this to event begin play. So as soon as the game starts, the cube will turn red. And then we're going to click compile. And if I close this, and we can see in the editor that the cube is white. If I now click play, the cube will turn red as soon as the game starts. And the way the construction script is different is it's going to execute all these nodes before the blueprint is even in the level. So if I just break the link here, and I copy this, so we can just drag with the mouse and press Ctrl C, and paste this here in the construction script, and click compile, it's going to already execute this event. So if I go to my viewport, the cube is already red. And as we can see in the viewport, the cube is already red. So that example just helps show the difference between the construction script and the event graph. Most of the coding and blueprints you're going to be making is going to be made in the event. And we can delete these two nodes. And inside of this blueprint, I want to show you another tab that you could be frequently working with. So inside each blueprint, there's going to be this tab called variables. And I'm going to show / go over some of the common variables that you're likely to be working with. So I'm just going to click this add variable button, and it will create this variable. I'm just going to click enter and just leave this as new variable _0 and click compile. And if we just go here, we can see that there's this variable type column, and if I just go here, there are loads of different variables. I'm going to go over the most likely common variables you'll be working with. So the first one is Boolean, and you want to make sure that you've clicked compile, and you'll see this default value. And with Boolean variables, you can basically determine if a thing is true or false. So if this is checked, it'll be true, and if this is blank, it'll be false. So I'm going to show you an example of how to work with these. So the first thing I'm going to do is first drag this in and select get. And this will just basically get a reference to this variable, and we'll be able to check if this is true or false. So the way to work with them is if we just drag off here and we can look for branch. And we can plug this into here. So event begin play, depending on the condition of this variable, we can decide what it will execute. So I'm just going to drag off true and look for print string. And if this variable Boolean is true, then I'm going to make the game say I am true. And then I'm just going to copy this and paste it down. And if this is false, I'm going to make the game say I am false. So if I just select this variable and click the box and click compile, now when I play my game, it's going to print string I am true. And if I just uncheck this and click play, it's going to say I am false. And we can also edit these variables inside of the blueprint. So we can drag this variable in and click set. So we can set whether this is true or false inside of here. So if this variable is true, then we can set it to be untrue. So that is how to use the Boolean variable. And inside of Unreal Engine, if I just select this variable and go to variable type, we can see there are many different variables and they can hold and store different amounts of information. So with that, I've basically done a basic rundown inside of a blueprint of what the viewport, construction script, and event graph does. And now a word from today's video sponsor. If you're interested in more aspects of game development, you may be interested in today's video sponsor, Core. Core is a new PC gaming platform powered by Unreal Engine that allows anyone to share, play, and create video games. It's completely free to download and available from the Epic Game Store. Core has features such as built-in multiplayer, so you don't have to worry about coding or setting up servers. This handles some of the most tough aspects of game development. It comes with thousands of high-quality free music, sound, and art assets, which can help you build your own AAA graphics-looking game from scratch quickly. You can also earn money with Core through the Core Perks program, which has a 50% revenue split with its game creators. This is 10 times higher than other programs such as Fortnite's creator revenue share. Some Core creators have been able to pay their bills, buy their dream cars, and quit their day jobs with the help of the Perks program. Use the link in the description to download Core for free to start creating your own game today. And now I'm going to go over the process of creating some blueprint systems that we could use in a game. So I'm just going to close this. And the first blueprint system we're going to make is we're going to make it so that this player character can go up to some cubes and it will collect the cubes, and the game will keep a track of how many cubes the player has collected, kind of like a coin collect system. So the first thing I'm going to do is in my viewport we can select this third person character, or we can go to the content folder and go to blueprints and select this third person character. And inside this third person character we can see that there are already some default blueprints set up, but we're going to be creating our own blueprint system. So like I said, with this blueprint system we're going to track and keep account of how many cubes the player has collected. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to keep track of this with a variable. So I'm going to go to my variables tab and click create new variable, and I'll just call this variable cubes, and under variable type we want to change this to be a float, and I'll click compile. So with a float variable it's going to be a number, so we're going to use this variable to keep a track of how many cubes my player has collected in the game. So I'm just going to close this, and I'm going to go to my blueprint folder and just select this first blueprint. And we can just, with the mouse key, select all of these and delete these nodes as we do not need them anymore. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that when my player overlaps this cube, it will basically give the player this cube. So the way we can set up that system is if we head over to the event graph, we can go to this event active again overlap, and of this other actor we just want to drag off here and look for cast to third person character. So what this will do is when we overlap this cube, it's going to check if this other actor is equal to our third person character. And if it is, then we're going to tell the game that he should pick up this cube. So first we can just check that this is working, because I can just drag off here and look for print string. And if I click play and I run into this cube, it will say hello. So it can recognize that we're the third person character and we're running through this cube. So that is great. So once we have done that, we want to tell the game to give the player a cube in this float variable. And the way we can do that is we can drag off here, and this will reference everything inside the third person character. So we can get the cube variable that we made. So we can just search in here and look for get cubes. And what we can do is just drag off here and look for float or add. And we can determine what we want to add to this value. So for this example, I just want to add 1. And then we're going to drag off the as third person character and look for set cubes. Set cubes. And we will set the cubes to this value. So I'm just going to delete this and connect this here. So what this blueprint will do is when our player overlaps this, we'll get how many cubes they have, add 1, and set that to be the cube value. And then once we've collected the cube, we don't want it so that this is still in the world, so we can then destroy this actor. So to destroy this actor, we can just drag off here and look for the destroy actor node, and then click compile. So I have 2 cubes in this world, so I'm just going to click Control W, and it will duplicate an actor in the world. So now we have 3 cubes in this world, and now if I click play, and I ramp to this cube, it will destroy, and I'll collect the cube. Although the game's not displaying how many cubes that we have. So I want the game to showcase how many cubes that the player has when we collect the cube. So before we destroy this actor, I'm just going to drag off here and look for print string, and then I'm going to connect this into here cubes. And now I click compile and click play. When I go to this cube, the game tells me I've collected 1 cube. I go here, it tells me I've collected 2 cubes. I go here, it tells me I've collected 3 cubes. Although there's a better way that we can display the information of how many cubes the player has, and we can do that with a user interface. So we're going to create a user interface, and this user interface will at all times show us how many cubes the player has collected. So let's go over the process of doing that. So we just want to go to the content folder and right click and create a new folder, and I'll just call this UI for user interface. And then we just want to double click and head inside here. Then we want to right click and look for user interface and select widget blueprint. So I'll call this blueprint my coin heads up display. So this will display how many cubes I have. Sorry, I should call that cube HUD. I'll just rename that. So we can just right click and click rename, and I'll just call this cube HUD. So this HUD will display how many cubes the player has. So we can just double click and head inside of this blueprint, and it will open up this. So this is just going to show us how our HUD is going to look, and we can use this palette to drag and drop in elements that we want to see in our HUD. And there are many different elements, although in this example we're just going to use the text element. So inside of this palette you want to look for text, and you just want to drag this into the screen. And when you drag this in, you'll see this anchor. So we can use anchors to basically lock the location of where we want this text to be in. So if I select my anchor and drag it here, it will help anchor this text to this position inside of the screen. So I'm just going to move my text, and I want my text to be in the top left here. So I can anchor it around the top left of the screen here. Now we want this text to display the amount of cubes that my player character has. And if we select our text, we can easily go over here under appearance and we can customize it. So I can make it red if I want to, although I'm going to leave this white. And we can change the size of this, so I can make this a bit bigger. So make this 40. So next, we want this text to display the amount of cubes that our player character has. So we can do that by going over to this content tab. And if we go to this text, this just shows what our text will display. So I can change this to cubes, and now the text will say cubes. Although we want this text to display the amount of cubes that our player character has inside of the game. And we can do that by going here and clicking bind and create binding. And the value inside of this return node will be what is shown inside of our text. So we want this to display the amount of cubes that we have. So we can do that by creating a reference to our third person character. So to do that, we can right click and look for the node which says get player character. And this will just get the player character that we're playing as. And in this project, by default, we're playing as this third person character. And then from here, we can drag off here and look for cast to third person character. And this will create a reference to the third person character, kind of like how we create a reference inside of this cube node. So I'm just going to head back to my cube pad. And what we can do is just drag off here and look for get cubes. And then we can drag this value and plug it into here. And it'll convert this float variable into a print string variable and display the amount of cubes that we have. Then we just want to plug from get text into here and connect this into the return node and click compile. And then we can just click this designer tab to go back to our designer tab and see how everything looks. So we're going to make it so this text will display the amount of cubes that our player character has. So next we want to add this HUD to our screen. So we can do that by going to our third person character. And then we just want to right click and look for event begin play. So we're going to run this node as soon as the game starts. And what we're going to do is add this HUD to our game. So to do that, we can just drag off here and look for create widget. And then we want to select the class. So here it's going to ask us the widget that we want to create. And we just want to select the cube HUD that we made. Then we're going to drag off here and look for add to viewport. And then click compile. So when we're the third person character, as soon as the game starts, it's going to add this cube HUD to the viewport. So now if I close this, and I'm just going to add some more cubes, so I'm just going to select this and click Ctrl W to duplicate it. And now if I click play, we can see in the top left of the screen, it says 0 because we have 0 cubes. And if I go up to 1 cube, it will now say 1. And if I collect all these cubes, this HUD will now accurately display the amount of cubes that my player character has. So that is just how to quickly set up a blueprint system which shows the amount of cubes that our player character. So this system also helps show us how we can use this float variable to store numbers. So there's one other variable type that you'll also commonly be working with, and that is the vector. So I'm just going to show you an example of how we can use it. So I'm just going to create a new variable, and we're going to call this location. And then we want to go to variable type and select vector. And then we're going to click compile. So this vector will be able to store 3 things: the X, Y, and Z location or something. So I'm going to show you an example of how we can use it. So event begin play, we can right click and you'll look for get actor location. And then we want to drag in this location and look for set location and connect this variable inside of here and connect this and then click compile. So event begin play, we're going to be setting this location variable to be where our actor is starting in the world. And then I'm going to right click and look for the 2 key and select 2. Then when I press the 2 button, I want to look for set actor location, and we'll set the actor's location to be this location variable. So I'll click get location and connect this into here. So event begin play, we're going to store the location of where our player is inside of this location vector variable. And then when I press the 2 button, we're going to set our actor's location to be whatever this variable is. So now if I click compile and I go play, the game's going to store my location. Then if I say move here and then I press 2, my game is going to teleport me to where I first saved. So say I started in a different location, like let's say to the left here, and I click play. The game will store my location here in the location vector variable. If I move away, I press 2, it it will take me back to that location. So I'm just going to head back inside my third person character. So that is basically how we can use the vector variable. So the Boolean, float, and vector variable are going to be most likely the common variables that you're going to work with. Now let's go over how to code some different blueprint systems. So I'm now going to go over the process of creating a trampoline blueprint. So we can head to our blueprints folder. Then I'm just going to right click and select blueprint class. And the blueprint we're going to create is going to be an actor because we want to create something that can be placed or spawned in the world. So I'll just select actor and I'll call this my trampoline. We can double click and head inside here. And in the viewport, I'm just going to add, and I'm just going to add a cube. And I'm just going to select this scale button, and I just want to flatten it in the z-axis. Next, because we're going to be making this trampoline, we want to go to add, and you want to look for box collision. And if we just go to shape, and you just want to click this box extent, and if we just using our mouse, we can adjust the size of this box. We can also use these arrow keys, although that will change the scale. So I'm going to change that to 1. So you can use either method you want, but you want to basically just make this box collision around this cube. So I'm going to do that now. So I basically made this box collision a bit on top of my cube. And the way we're going to make this a trampoline is first we want to select this box and we want to scroll down. And under collision, that's good. We want it to be overlap or dynamic. And we can scroll down and we can see all these different events. So I'm just going to drag this so you can see this a bit better. And what we want to do is just click this on component begin overlap. So we can just click this button. And on component begin overlap with this box collision, we're going to check to see if it's overlapping the third person character. So we'll just drag off here, look for cast to third person character, and if it is the third person character, then we're going to launch him in the air. So we can just drag off as third person character and look for launch character. So this is just a built-in component inside of the third person character, and we can decide how far we want to launch them. So we can launch them in the X, Y, or Z axis. So I'm going to launch them in the Z axis as that will launch them up. Now we're going to launch them up 500. And there are these two boxes, X, Y override and Z override. If we just click these buttons, like the text says, it will basically instantly set our character's velocity to be the value that we put inside of this box. If these boxes aren't checked, then it's simply going to just add this velocity to our character. So I want this box checked, so I'm just going to click Z override. And then we're going to click compile. And then we can drag in this trampoline. And we can see it's got the box line. So when we overlap this, it's going to launch our character into the air. So now I click play. And I go over to this. It will launch my character. Although that wasn't very high, so I'm just going to make this something like 1,000. No, I'm going to make this 3,000. Now if I click play. Whoops. And now if I close this and click play, go to my trampoline, it will launch me all the way high into the air. So with that, we have set up a nice trampoline system. So now let's create another blueprint system. So we're going to create a blueprint system, which is going to be a door. When we go up to this door, it's going to slide open and we'll be able to pass through it. And then we're going to create another blueprint system, although this time it's going to be a door which requires a key card. And if we don't have this key card, the door is not going to open. So first, let's create our regular door. So I'm just going to right click and look for blueprint class and select actor, and I'll call this my door. I will head inside here and I'll just go to add. I'm going to add a cube. Oops. So look for cube, and then I'm just going to select the scale, and I'm just going to scale so it's a bit flat, and I will just make this door a bit big. And then we want to go to add and look for box collision, and we just want to select this and drag it to the bottom. And I'm going to scale it this time. We just want to scale this so it's in front of the door. And move it so it's in front of the door. Then if we click compile, I can close this. And I'm just going to position this door here. And we can just go to the world and drag in this cube. And I'm just going to put some walls around this door. So I'm just manipulating these objects and I'll place them next to this door. I'll press Ctrl W to duplicate this. Whoops, I'll press Ctrl W and I'll make a copy of this and I'll just slide this next to the door. And I'm just going to move these up a bit and make it so that these are red. So if I click play, we're going to make it so that when we go up to this door, it will slide open. So in order to do that, we can head over to our door blueprint and scroll down again and go to on component can overlap, and on component can overlap, we're going to check that this other actor is our third person character. So look for cast to third person character. And then if our third person character does overlap this box, what we're going to do is make it so that this door slides open. And we can do that using a timeline. So off of the cast to third person character, we're going to look for add timeline. And we'll use this to make the door slide open. I'll just leave this at timeline 0. Then we want to double click and head inside this timeline. And it will be blank. And we just want to click add float track. And we'll just call this open door track. And now if I head back to my event graph, we can see it's added that float track. So this is going to be a float track similar to the float variable that we made inside of our third person character. So I'm going to head back to my door blueprint and double click inside here. So at the top, we're going to see this thing called length. So this will basically be how long do we want this timeline to be. For this example, we're going to make it 2 seconds. So overall, this is going to mean we're going to make it so that the door will open in these 2 seconds. It'll take 2 seconds for the door to open. And what we're going to do is just right click and look for add key to curve float 1. And first we want the time to be 0 and the value to be 0. Then we want to right click again and look for add key to curve float. And here we want the time to be 2 and the value to be 1. So this timeline will basically move from a value of 0 at time 0 to a value of 1 over 2 seconds. And you'll see why I've done it this way. So I'll now explain what we've just done. If we head back to the event graph, this open door track is going to do this event where at time 0 it'll be a value 0 and at time 2 it'll be a value of 1. And that's going to be helpful because we just want to right click and look for the lerp float node and plug this in to 0. So over the course of this alpha, it's going to move from a value of A to B. So when this is at 0, the value is going to be at A, and when this is at value 1, it's going to be this value B. So you'll get an understanding of what I mean by this when we set up the door. So first, we want to drag in our cube and look for set relative location. And then we want to just right click here and look for split structure pin. If I just go back to my viewport, we can see that this cube, we're going to move it up so it slides up in the Z location. So when I move this up, we can see that the value changes here. So I'm just going to move this back to the default value at 0 and then head back to my event graph. And then we're going to connect this into Z. And for B, we want to put a value such like 200. And then I can just move this up. So it's going to move to here, roughly here, when the door opens. So if I go back to my event graph, we then want to plug this into update. So what's going to happen is when we overlap this box, it's going to move our cube in the z-axis from a value of 0 when this is at 0 to a value of 200 when this is at 1. And that will take place over 2 seconds because that's how long we made the timeline. So now if I click compile, close this, and I go play, if I go up to my door, we can see that the door will start to slide open over a course of 2 seconds. So now we're going to make a door which requires a keycard. So to save time, I'm just going to select my door blueprint, press Ctrl+C, and then Ctrl+V to duplicate it, and then I'll right click, and I'll rename this my door which needs keycard. And then we'll double click and head inside here. And this time, when our player overlaps the box inside of this door, the door is only going to open if the player has a keycard. So to do that, we can just drag off here and look for. And now we're going to set up a condition for this branch. So what we're going to do is head back to the third person character. And we're going to create a new variable inside of them. So just click this add new variable, and we'll call this has keycard ? And we'll change this variable type to be a Boolean, and then we will click compile. And then we want to head back to our door which needs keycard, and we want to click compile just so it's updated and can make reference to the latest variable that we made that has keycard. I'm going to drag off this as third person character and look for get has keycard and connect this into here. And if this is true, then it's going to do as it regularly does and open up the sliding door. However, if this is false, then we're just going to print string to the game and say player does not have keycard. And now I'll click compile. So then finally, we're going to create a keycard that our player can collect inside the game. So we can right click, look for blueprint class, select an actor, and I'll just call this my keycard. Head inside here. I will go to add, and I'm going to make this a sphere. I will scroll down, and for collision presets, I'm going to set this to overlap all, and we can go to event graph, and we can reference the event actor begin overlap. So off of other actor, we can cast to the third person character, and we will then drag off here and look for set has keycard, and then we want to make sure this is checked, and this will tell the game that the player now has the keycard. Then we can drag off here and look for destroy actor and click compile. So now if I close this, and let's say I just change this to be the door which has the keycard, and I'll also just head inside here, go to the viewport and change the color of it to be the red, so we just know that this is the different door. Now if I go play and I try and head up to this door, it's going to say player does not have keycard on the screen. If I go again, player does not have keycard. However, if I drag in my keycard variable, if I drag in my keycard blueprint that we just made, and I go play, I collect it, the keycard disappears, and now if I go up to the store, it will open. Now we've used blueprints to create two systems: a system where I have to have a keycard in order to open a door, and a system where we can just open a regular door. Anyway, I think that's all for today's video. I hope you've learned something, and hopefully now you have a better understanding of blueprints and how to create your own blueprints to make some systems. That's all. If you enjoyed, you could like and subscribe, that would help, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Also, don't forget to check out Core. It's completely free. Use the link in the description to check it out today.